Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. New venue, new time, so things are a little off with me. maybe with some of you as well, but it's been a long time since we've been able to gather and do this. And we do appreciate the time that you guys are taking out this morning to come in and enlighten us on local, state, and federal level issues. And so without further ado, go ahead and take my seat, John, that's okay. So without further ado, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We got a couple of people we know are still coming yet. We'll call the stuff in traffic. But I think if we don't mind, we'll start off with, who shall we start off? Senator Bison, how about you? You like to lead the pack, don't you?
Oh, you bet.
All right.
I can't think of anything better. May I present from here? Can everyone hear me? Oh, I won't be in the,
As long as nobody...
I can turn the camera.
I just have a few notes in front of me, which is the only reason that I would want to
Sure.
Be here. Otherwise, I'm holding papers in my hand.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'll take questions in a couple minutes. There are a couple things that we are working on. One is the budget, and the budget is now soup. It has been presented to the governor, and the governor is going to take out her red pen and decide what she likes and what she doesn't like. I think that she's going to like most of the things within the budget because this time she had a fair amount of participation in the budget process. And so we still anticipate there may be a couple lines that she'll find declare as being unenforceable. And this is mainly boilerplate. This is not so much the money, but what she has to do with the money. And oftentimes, if she vetoes the boilerplate, she also vetoes the appropriations, which a couple of years ago gave us one of the most conservative budgets that we've had in a long time, simply because she vetoed quite so many items. This year, we have a relatively large budget compared to prior years, simply because we have had the influx of dollars, and I am guessing that you have seen a fair number of those dollars already come through. And our budget this year is going to be $69 billion and change, up from about $64 billion in prior years. So there is money in there. We have Julie with us today, and I love it. I didn't see her sneak in, so thank you, Julie, for joining us, as well as from Representative Elbert's group up there. And it's great having back, and I really ought to let Representative Elbert's office speak about budget because he was the appropriations chair in the House, and he had a major say in where the appropriations went. And I have to think that this can only be good for Ionia. I was in charge of the corrections budget and the judiciary budgets in the Senate. And I think that that also has implications for Ionia as well, given the workforce here. The corrections budget was a 2% increase overall. We've had a decrease in the number of staff needed because we've had a decrease in the number of convicts that we have had incarcerated. 2-3 years ago, we had about 46,000 of our citizens incarcerated, and now we're down to about 32,000 of our constituents incarcerated, and because of that, we've had a decrease in workforce, but we still have a severe shortage, and a shortage of workers is something that I've heard almost routinely from businesses and from the private sector and the public sector. It seems like everyone has a hard time getting new people here in the state of Michigan. I want to say we have about 100,000 people who are now unemployed, who prior to the COVID epidemic were employed. And so it becomes a question of where did all of our workers go? And I don't know that I have the answer to that overall. Even though we have a large budget, there's a number of dollars that we did not spend. I believe we have, and I'm sure that Representative Albert's office will correct me if I'm wrong, but I have over $5 billion that is not yet distributed in the state fiscal recovery program from the federal government, the so-called Biden bucks. And we also have significant general fund dollars that we have not spent. And my number on that is $1.7 million general fund that we have not spent. And maybe it was only 800 million, but I thought it was about 1.8 million. But we are trying to make sure that where we spend one-time dollars, that they go to infrastructure rather than employment costs or other things that will be an ongoing expense, because we anticipate that next year's budget is going to be considerably smaller, more in line with last year's budget, rather than the trillions of dollars that are coming to states from the federal government. And it seems like they have even more money that they have planned to send our way, for better or worse. The other thing that I was asked to speak on was a couple of the programs that, a couple of the bills that I'm working on. One of the bills is the stroke and STEMI healthcare system. It's a stroke, and STEMI is heart attacks. And we're trying to build in a couple $1 million for a statewide system that would prioritize heart attacks and strokes that are very, very time sensitive to get to a institution where they can be taken care of, rather than to a place, because time is of the essence here, and we would hate to transport someone in one direction when they need to go in another direction. And I'm under the impression that I have overused my time already.
I apologize. I should have laid this out in advance. Generally, we allow 5 to 7 minutes, depending on number of speakers. How much time do you have left?
We're looking to pay down debt. We're looking for some high water infrastructure grants. State police are getting secondary road patrols with an increase. Military and Veterans Affairs got a significant increase. Talking points on the integration of physical and mental health include 7 priorities. We're looking to get a system where we have patient-centered care that highlights the needs and the rights of people we're trying to help. Choice, where you have more than one place to go. Quality, where no one should be restricted or denied the best care possible. Transparency and accountability, ensuring comprehensive and consistent oversight. Efficiency in the system, whereas now we have many different systems offering variable services. And stewardship, where every penny needs to go to care and what's best for the patient as well as the taxpayer. And so those are the guidelines that we are trying to use to fashion the mental health integration. And questions later, I presume.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for
No, thank you.
taking so much of your time.
I should have preceded the meeting with saying that we typically do allow 5 to 7 minutes for the speakers. Again, depending on the amount of speakers we have, we try to keep this to an hour. And then all questions will be after the speakers are done. And in addition, something that we're doing new this year that we haven't done, so I hope none of you are camera shy like I am.
Oh, you're a ham.
We are going to film this so that we can go ahead and get it out to our community. So I hope that's all right with anybody. If it's not, we'll just film the back of your heads, okay? So anyway, we might as well follow up on the budgetary comments with Matea, who is representing Representative Albert. Did you have some budget?
Yes, I have a few.
All right, did you want to come up here?
Sure, I can.
Yeah, this is the spot right here.
Hello, my name's Matea. It's good to be with you this morning. I work with Representative Thomas Albert's office, and he asked if I could just share a few highlights of the budget this morning. One of the main areas is trying to assist workers and job providers during this difficult time, recognizing the labor shortage and recognizing a few key areas. With the Unemployment Insurance Agency, you may well be aware there's been, unfortunately some people wanting to use the opportunity to, submit fraudulent claims. So the budget puts $150 million to offset the losses from these fraudulent claims, try to keep the unemployment system stable, ensure job providers aren't asked to pay more into the system, and kind of ensure that people who are in need of unemployment payments continue to be able to receive them to support themselves and their families. In terms of workforce development, the budget puts $100 million towards this area. It goes into existing internship and apprenticeship programs, and also new workforce programs to help people get back into the labor force in new ways, or try to bolster those apprenticeship programs that already exist. In terms of some of the local tax framework, the budget tries to align state law with federal law in terms of helping small businesses save on federal taxes. So maximizing state and local deductions when small businesses pay federal taxes. And this is something large corporations are already able to do, but trying to make sure that this is also available to smaller businesses. In terms of communities, the budget does put nearly $2 million into a grant program for county fairs. So of course, locally, the Ionia Free Fair stands to benefit from this investment, and boosting agriculture in general, which is one of our state's largest industries. In terms of community redevelopment, there's a $100 million grant program for projects to improve Michigan downtown areas. So recognizing the impacts that COVID-19 has had on local areas, and trying to bring tax reverted property back to functional use through rehabilitation. So overall, another effort to help small businesses as well in downtown areas. In terms of child care, there is $1.4 billion put into this sector, trying to make child care more affordable and accessible to people. Also taking into account that there's a big return to in-person work, and there's a great need for family needs emerging from the pandemic. And then also in terms of infrastructure, there is money being put into local bridges, is one of the key areas. So there was a share of federal COVID relief dollars, $195 million that were going to go to the Michigan Department of Transportation. That will be shifted to local governments for the purposes of repairing local bridges. So that's good that this money can go directly to local communities for that purpose. And then a few other key areas. There was a $500 million deposited into the rainy day fund, which is particularly helpful in times of economic trouble. This is the largest ever investment put into the state's rainy day fund. So this is important for in cases of economic trouble. As I mentioned, that money is there. And then I guess lastly I'll mention the budget did include language which prohibits state governments from implementing a vaccine passport. This is basically meaning that the state can't require COVID vaccination as a condition for receiving government services, entering government facilities, or for employment. So those are some key areas. There's definitely a lot in the budget, but Representative Albert wanted me to at least cover those areas as ones that he wanted to share with the Ionia community. So thank
Appreciate that. Not going in any particular order because everything's hit and miss here this particular day. So, Rick Truer, is it Truer?
Truer.
Truer, I apologize. District Director for the U.S. Rep. Peter Meyer.
Good morning, everyone. You guys mentioned my name is Rick Truer. I do work for Congressman Meyer. He regrets that he can't be here this morning. He took a 6 a.m. flight back to D.C., and I'm sure, given what's going to happen this week, he'd probably much rather be here. So, but I used to work for Congressman Ehlers years ago, and so over 10 years ago, I used to come to these meetings all the time. So I'm glad that they're back and that we're able to participate. So. As I mentioned, this week's probably going to be a little crazy in DC, given that they're going to be voting on the infrastructure bill and then possibly the $3.5 trillion bill that Senator Bison just sort of alluded to, that there may be more federal funds coming to the state. So Congressman Meyer does, he doesn't have too many problems with the transportation infrastructure bill. It's pretty routine bill that happens for reauthorizing funding for infrastructure for transportation projects. But the problem will be whether or not it is tied to the $3.5 trillion bill. So we'll be taking a look at that because the $3.5 trillion spending is just way too much for our nation to be able to handle right now, and will not be something that Congressman Meyer will be supporting. Last week they also voted on the National Defense Authorization Act, which basically funds the military for another year. Congressman Meyer serves on the Department of Homeland Security Committee, as well as the Foreign Affairs Committee. He had several amendments in that bill. It did pass on very wide bipartisan support, 316 to 113. He had some amendments in there that support the evacuation of Afghan allies, improving water quality at the Department of Defense facilities, and establishes a global war on terrorism memorial at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And will also provide a pay increase for our service members as well. On the Afghanistan front, I think many of you know that he recently made a trip there. He had served in the military and then worked in Afghanistan for an NGO there and lived there for several years. When he was living there, he did evacuation work for folks who were living in Afghanistan. So we're working closely with some of the refugee resettlement organizations in this district, such as Bethany and Samaritas, to help welcome some of the folks who have been vetted by the government, who have visas, to come and resettle into West Michigan. So we're going to be working closely with them, trying to help them find employment and that type of thing. We met recently with some of the folks at Bethany, some of the Afghan refugees who've been here for a while, and they're just a very impressive group, and they're so grateful to be in the U.S. Several of them have all started their own businesses and contributing well to society, and it is great to see that how their lives have changed since they've gotten here. So that's a brief update for me, and we'll take questions in a little bit.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Before I bring the next speaker up, I will say that before next meeting, we will find a non-squeaky spot on the floor and place an X on it, okay? So, poor Rick, he's trying to find a spot to...
Right, you see that good old town hall, right?
Yeah, it's okay. Julie, how would you like, we have Representative Julie Calley.
I tend to travel when I talk too, so I'll try not to squeak, I promise. It is so good to be back with you. I see some familiar faces and some new faces, and I just appreciate the opportunity to reignite this meeting every month. So thank you to the Chamber for putting it together. I'll just rehash the last 18 months in about 5 minutes, if that's okay, because we haven't talked in that long. Just kidding. I do want to give a shout out to your representative, Albert, though. He has done Ionia proud, he has done the state proud. When you look at the way he has negotiated the spending of our one-time money, his key word has been sustainability. we could prop up anything that we wanted to for a year, but then that system would crash the next year because we wouldn't have the ongoing funding to support it. So he's really done a great job negotiating wise ways that this state will benefit in the long term from the one-time funding. And if you pull out that extra federal funding from our current budget, you'll find that the state budget went up less than inflation. So we're doing a good job of reining in state spending as well. One thing that our legislative offices continue to deal with are unemployment calls. This has been a problem ever since we were shut down last year. And I completely understood to begin with that the unemployment agency did not have enough individuals to support all of the workers who were out of employment, nor should they have had that system in place, right? That would have been a lot of bureaucrats sitting around doing nothing. But 18 months later, they're still failing the people that we're supposed to be serving. And so the legislative offices do not have direct access to the system which supports our unemployed. I'm gonna put supports in air quotes because I actually had experience trying to help somebody with it one-on-one. Very difficult. I don't consider myself to be a technological idiot, but I'm telling you, it is not software that comes naturally. So it's not user-friendly to begin with. We don't see a high volume of calls answered into the unemployment agency, and therefore the legislative offices kind of act as that go-between trying to help the either the business owner or the collector with their problem. Suffice it to say that as we have been digging into this as the legislature, we learned that when the federal funds came out, there were several qualifiers which I did the exact same thing. I walked in on somebody's speech. It's a very unforgiving floor. And this is karma. Letters went out telling people that one of the qualifiers for unemployment, federal unemployment, had been accidental. You should never have been on the list, and oops, maybe the state paid you on accident. Over 600,000 letters went out, causing all sorts of stress and anxiety. This happened in July. While digging into it, the legislature and thankfully the press helped us learn the state government was notified about this in January. And they waited that long to address it. And first they said, well, you probably owe everything back, and now they've since walked that back. It has just been a tremendous kerfuffle. And so we continue to ask the unemployment agency, what do you need? How can we support you? And how can we best support Michiganders, because it's past time that we are dealing with these cases on a timely basis. I will not touch on the budget anymore because I think that was fantastic from my two colleagues on the ropes. We will talk about that at greater length if you want. I'm having office hours in Saranac on Friday, and it will be a budget briefing specifically, also in Hastings, but you know, that's obviously outside of the county. I wanted to let you know about a few legislative initiatives coming out of my office. I'm on a child care package because we believe that is one of the things currently holding the workforce back from returning to normal. I was pleased to learn that a number of our child care providers have actually not closed. I thought that was the problem. Most of them have been able to make it through the pandemic and are now open, but their slots are limited because they cannot staff. And if you don't have people, then you can't take in kids. And so there is a package out there trying to cut red tape and get rid of some of the bureaucracy that holds back our smaller providers. I'm pleased to be on that as well. I've heard from our locals that we have a paramedic shortage. Actually, I've heard from our locals that we have an everything shortage. Teachers, waitresses, bankers, you name it, you know this because you're business owners. But specifically with regards to paramedics, we were long overdue for increasing the Medicaid reimbursement, and that comes directly out of the state budget. So we put in a significant uplift. We will now reimburse just as much as Medicare. Medicare is paid federally, Medicaid is paid state, and that should bring the necessary parity to our paramedics and allow them to continue providing services to all of us, especially in the rural areas, which is so important. We have at our disposal 911, which is fantastic. If you have a cell phone, if you have a landline, If your business still owns a fax, for every line you pay 25 cents a month to support our 911 infrastructure, and that allows us to text to 911. Some people don't know they can do that. If perchance you're in a situation where you don't want to use your voice and give away your location, you can certainly text. They prefer that you call if possible because it's just quicker to gather information. We also have agreements with local dispatch centers. So if something happens in Ionia and our dispatchers are overwhelmed with callers, it flows through to another dispatch center perfectly. You have no idea that you perhaps have reached Eaton County, but there's no delay, and it never rings busy. And these are some of the essential things that we've become accustomed to if we have to call 911. That particular set of supports in statute sunsets at the end of this year. So that means nothing would exist to collect the 25 cents and continue supporting 911 in January. I have a bill that is obviously our priority this fall. We need to get that through and continue that support structure. I have even better news. Within the original bill, we had to increase the surcharge. It was 2 cents per month because what we were looking at going forward was not sustainable. Then I paused, talked to Chair Albert, and we got an increase in the budget, which means that the taxpayers will not see any increase. We took some of that one-time funding from the federal government. We said, what should we support? Well, let's start with public safety. And so there was a $16 million appropriation in there, which will cover the increase that we thought we would have to ask people for. And I'm working on a Pbm bill, which is Pharmacy Benefit Manager. Almost nobody knows about this, but they might care. So the Pbm is the third-party administrator between your insurance company and your pharmacy benefit. They operate in the shadows. They've been around for 60 years. They're completely unregulated at the federal level, and they're really good at figuring out how to get money out of your pockets. So our state is behind. The states have taken to trying to regulate this on their own because there is not a federal solution right now. And this bill of mine puts over in the Senate, and I know that the senator is on health policy and working diligently on it. This would really rein in their ability to increase costs and take money out of their pocket. So thank you very much. It was great to see all of you today. Unfortunately, I scheduled another event before I knew about this one, so I do have to depart this time. But from now on, we will certainly hold my schedule open. Thank you.
All right, a lot of good information from everybody. While Julie was talking, we had Melissa Fish, who is the regional liaison from the Michigan Governor's Office. She waded through the sea of squeaks, and if you want to come on up, Melissa, you are welcome to.
Apologies for my grand entrance. And apologies for being late. I was coming in from Kalamazoo and ran into some horrendous traffic on I-96 due to an accident. So, my name is Melissa Fish. I'm the newer regional liaison for Governor Whitmer's office for this area. As I said, I live in Kalamazoo, but I cover 22 counties in West and Southwest Michigan. So I do have lots of cards with me for folks so you can get my contact info. And really my role is to make sure that I'm present in communities and knowing what's happening on the ground so that we can take that information of what's happening so that we can, ideally we make good policy choices with that, right? And so, and then also be able to share the governor's proposals back down to folks so that people know, what the governor's up to, the direction that she wants to move. Right now, obviously the big topics are budget and all of the American Rescue Plan dollars that we still have yet to spend, and those are going to continue to be, big parts of our discussions over the next coming months. And so, it sounds like there were some really good budget updates, so I think I'll kind of leave that piece, other than to say that we're really excited about the state budget. We think there's a lot of really good pieces in there. We're really excited about the huge support that we have for childcare. We know that that's a huge issue, and really excited that money is also going to allow us to allow providers to increase wages for folks. It provides some one-time bonuses as well, because we know that child care workers are some of the lowest paid folks who are doing, I think we would all agree, a very, very, very important job, right? Taking care of people's children in a safe environment. and so that they deserve to be compensated for that work. So something else that I wanted to touch on real quick is that last week the governor rolled out her My New Economy plan at Mackinac. And so there are really 3 pillars to this proposal, and this is part of how we want to spend some of the remaining federal dollars that we have still at the state to spend, because we've got roughly $10 billion I think left, maybe a little less. And so the first pillar of the My New Economy plan is about growing the middle class. So making sure that we're lifting families out of poverty, providing access to greater access to childcare, which we're going to be able to do with our current state budget as it is. But we know that that's something that can always use more money. And then we also want to make sure that 60% of adults have some sort of post-secondary credential by 2030. So whether that's a degree from a community college, a university, some sort of skilled trade certification, we know that that's going to help us create a growing middle class in Michigan. We also want to support small businesses. We know that they were, small businesses always have needed our support, but they were particularly devastated during the pandemic. And so we want to make Michigan a top 10 state for small business job growth and revenue growth. We want to grow the state income and be in the top 10 for state household income growth during the next 5 years. And we want to grow the amount of money that we're spending in venture capital funding as well. And so there are going to be a lot more pieces to how we do all of these things moving forward that'll be coming out over the coming weeks. And then the third pillar being we want to build strong communities. And one piece of that is that we know we need to make huge investments into high-speed internet. We want to make sure that everyone who wants access to high-speed internet can have that access. And not only can they have access, but they can afford that access, because it doesn't matter if there's internet access to the home if the cost is a barrier. And this is the lieutenant governor's #1 issue. It was a huge part of the reason why he wanted to become lieutenant governor, is because this is something that he's very passionate about and wants to make sure that we solve in the next few years. So we want to make huge investments in that. And then we also know that housing is to say it's a huge problem is an understatement, but we want there to be 75,000 new or rehabilitated housing units within the next 5 years in Michigan. We know that every community is facing housing shortages, in all different types of housing shortages, right? Not just affordable housing, right? But it's all types of units most communities are in need of. We have a pretty old housing stock in Michigan, and so there's a lot of rehab that we can do, but there's also a lot of new builds that we need to do as well. So those are just a couple things that I wanted to share with everyone. Like I said, I've got cards. I'm always happy to come meet with you one-on-one, meet with other folks that you know, happy to come give updates. I'm happy to be a listener. So just please reach out and let me know how we can partner together. Thank you.
Does anyone want to fill their coffee cup up again? We'll get all the squeaks out of it.
Didn't know if anybody had been not doing it because I didn't want to interrupt before.
All right, enough said. All right, well, next I'm going to bring up a lady who has filled some big shoes in the city. This is, I believe, your first legislative coffee with us, Prisha?
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to come up, you had some things to say? No.
No.
Did you want to get your face in front of the camera? Well, for those of you out there, her name is Prisha Garland, and she is our new city manager, okay? And she's doing a wonderful job filling Jason's shoes, so appreciate that. Linda, how about you? Do you have anything for DDA that you'd like to?
Just a few things.
You want to come up here?
I do a lot of squeaking on the way up.
That is all right. I
I
don't think you can get away from the squeaking. Here's the spot right there.
We have some exciting things that are happening in the downtown, and when people think about the DDA, the first thing they think about is downtown, but actually the district is a lot larger than that. But in the downtown area, we are having 2 programs that are being put into unutilized areas. We have 2 buildings that are going to be having MEDC funding for rental rehab. We have some brand new apartments that are gonna go into places where there probably haven't been any daylight or any usage in probably the past 50 years. And also the side grant programs. We have some of those that are already being applied for, so that's very, very exciting. We are going to have 5 new businesses opening probably in the next few months. Again, that's exciting, so we want everybody to start shopping downtown as much as possible. Buy Nearby, that is this weekend, that's our new program from the Michigan retailers. We can put billions of dollars